10 days into the Club World Cup 2025, and I'm going to be putting a question to Colin of match fixing and Club World Cup being fixed during today's episode, and Colin has no idea this is coming. But I wonder when I put it to him if he's going to be nodding and agreeing with me on this situation. So, we're 10 days in, and there's been a couple of groups already decided, as well as match day 2, most of it being played since we were last talking to you. So after Auckland City's 10-0 to Bayern, Colin, they only conceded 6 against Benfica. Fair play to them.
Yeah, I'll say at the end of the day, and this is very much like a non-league side making an FA Cup run, right? So Auckland City just made £3 million on a club that operates at about $500K a year. They're good for a bit. So this is infrastructure.
I'm all for making competitions bigger, but one thing I would say is before this event, the biggest scoreline in the competition history was a 6-1, which means technically they've had the worst defeats ever in both of the first 2 games. 10 conceding, losing by 10 and losing by 6 is the worst ever. So like you said, these people are part-time, semi-professional, amateur players playing against the best in the world. Should they be here? I mean, I guess if they're the best team in Oceania, then technically yes, they should be here, because every continent deserves to be represented. But a few years ago, Colin, and a prime example of this is the Nations League. A few years ago was suggested that the weaker national sides should play the weaker national sides in a pre-qualifier. And the Nations League almost shows that when they play each other, you get some cracking matches, which I'm sure in the North American Nations League as well, some of them weaker nations actually get some really good games when they do come up against each other. Should there be a pre-qualifier for the Club World Cup, or do you think it's fair that they are here even though they've conceded 16 in 2 games?
By the strictest letter of how they've set this up, they earn their place, right? You can't argue it. They won the Oceanic Champions League. They won their place. I think it becomes very far-fetched from a FIFA perspective to say this is the best clubs in the world, right? Because the competitions aren't on a level playing field. So I would argue that it's a conversation that has to happen between FIFA and the confederations, that the Confederation Champions Leagues either need to reach a certain level to qualify for this, to avoid this kind of a thing, which means investment from somebody, or we're all just going to hold our nose and recognize that as this goes by, you're going to have these discrepancies. And to your point, Oceania's got the same problem that CONCACAF has with the Caribbean. Like, you have ultra small populations, you have, developing nations, you have non-existent infrastructure. This is the same problem, like, should Bermuda play in the Gold Cup, right? Should the Bahamas make it to the Gold Cup? Should Curacao play in Copa America, right? It's those kinds of discussions. I don't think there's a very good answer to it. At the end of the day, I think there's a discussion that says, hey, if you want to establish, FIFA's got the money, and FIFA can move the money from itself to its confederations, and then I think it becomes a discussion that the confederations have to want to invest in a full-fledged professional game. And if there's not enough draw, balance, whatnot to it, and it doesn't feed the long-term space, then congratulations. Every 4 years, you're going to watch a Bayern, a PSG, a City, a Juventus, a whoever go pummel the snot out of whoever the hell comes out of Oceania 1,000,000-1, and it's going to look stupid, and Godspeed.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the other side of things, one thing you called in the preview, etc., is the Brazilian teams looking like world beaters. I mean, on match day 2, you've got PSG losing to Botafogo. Working our way down, you got Flamengo beating Chelsea 3-1. You've got the Argentines in Boca only losing 2-1 to Bayern. By the way, South African side, Sundowns, only losing by the 1 goal to Dortmund 4-3. The Japanese side only losing by the 1 goal to Inter 2-1. Fluminense putting 4 past the South Koreans. River Plate Monterrey 0-0. An absolute slugfest, shall we say. Juventus, you got Real Madrid beating Pachuca. I mean, I don't know. Who was it who gave the penalty away? Let me click to see who got the red card. Asensio, yeah, he gave a penalty away, didn't he, in the opening day? And then then got a red card in today's, in that fixture. So he's not had the best couple of games of the Club World Cup so far. You've got Al Hilal drawing to Salzburg. If you ever want to see what money buys you, it's a 0-0 against a drinks firm. And Man City putting 6 past the UAE side Al Ain. And I mean, I'm shocked Man City scored 6, to be honest with you, Colin, because you know what they like. Pass it sideways. Can we at least praise the fact they got in the box enough times to score 6?
Well, to be honest, right, Gundogan's first goal, he was basically trying to cross it to Holland.
It was a cross, wasn't it? It was a cross.
Put it in the net. So I think your argument still stands.
His second goal was fantastic, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, right little chip.
I mean, that was, I think the same argument we just made with Auckland City against, like, some of the, Al Ain, even Al Hilal. I mean, okay, fine, they got more money in it, but they still look like they labored against Salzburg.
A mile off it, yeah. It the goal by the Juventus player? Was it Yildiz who scored that absolute worldie from outside the box?
Yeah.
It's one of them ones where you just know it's going over. It's going miles over 90% of the time.
Yeah, but that 10% though was. But to kind of cycle back, right? The South American sides went 8 unbeaten before Boca lost by 1 to Bayern in the competition. They came out punching.
I think the Brazilians almost not a wild card. Monterrey, for me, I think could go far.
Yeah.
How's the group looking for Monterrey at the minute? See that? Oh, that's the issue. They have Monterrey will play this.
Monterrey play Urawa Reds, and if they win, they need to win by 2. And if Inter and River Plate draw, then Monterrey need to win by 2, and they'll be they'll get through. If they win by 3, they'll actually go through.
If they win by 3, no matter what, they go through. Yeah, if they win by 3, if they win by 2, I think no matter what, they'll go through.
Inter has to lose or draw to River Plate.
Yeah, okay. But I'm looking. Let's discuss what I've noticed, Colin. Okay. So you told me that Palmeiras versus Inter Miami. Palmeiras rested all their players. Okay. Yeah. So they were very weak inside. Okay. Now, Palmeiras finished on 5 points, top of the group. Inter Miami finished on 5 points, second, with a goal difference of 1. Porto finished on 2 points, with a -1 goal difference. But personally, I thought Porto would have won that final game against Al Ali, okay? Or even if Al Ali won. Either way, okay, if Palmeiras or Inter Miami lost and one of Porto or Al Ali won, then they would have been out. Where a draw guaranteed Palmeiras and Inter Miami went through together. Now, Inter Miami were 2-0 up and cruising, and Palmeiras came back to make it 2-2. Do you not find it strange that Lionel Messi's side, which you tipped to guarantee, you didn't give them much hope, have gone through in a game where you said Palmeiras rested loads of their players, even though if they'd have lost, they would have gone out, potentially. They weren't guaranteed to be through, so why are they resting a lot of the players?
Well, I suspect that they thought that they were that going into that game that they were going to cruise.
Because if
Miami, other than Lionel Messi on paper, Miami's not particularly scared.
Yeah, but like if Inter Miami had won that 2-0, okay, then Palmeiras would have had a 0 goal difference and 4 points. If Porto had won the game 2-0, they would have had a 1 goal difference with 4 points, which means with 5 points, so they would have gone through.
Yeah,
I just feel something weird is going on there.
Well, I can see how it feels funny. I mean, I would say the calculus going out is, in my mind, right? The calculus going into that game, if I'm Palmeiras, is Inter Miami, other than Leo Messi, is not a particularly strong side, and Porto have done absolutely nothing in the tournament going into match day.
Yeah.
They should beat the Egyptian. They should have beaten the Egyptian side.
100%.
They've not shown. They didn't show like they were going to come out and light them on fire. So if I'm Palmeiras, I go into this and say, look, if I get out of this, best case scenario, I get out of this, or worst case scenario, I get out with a draw, and that means I'm playing the second place team in Group B, which the question was whether it was going to be Botafogo or Madrid. Now, in reality, neither one of those sides are probably super favorable for Palmeiras, and I'm going to need to make sure that I am absolutely firing on all cylinders. If something goes really sideways, then potentially I'm second in the group, and I got to go play PSG, which means I really, really need to make sure that I'm ready. PSG is beatable, but you're going to need to bring your A game. So I think every calculation that feels logical, if I'm managing Palmeiras, says I just need to get through Inter Miami, and I need to be like A game ready for whatever's coming out of Group B. Now, I think they got shocked a little bit by going down 2-0. They pulled it back. I think they got lucky and got the best possible break out of this, and they've got to go play Botafogo, which is at least a side that they're insanely familiar with. So, like, that one to me is much-watch TV. The atmosphere in that game is going to be nuts.
Yeah.
And it should be a fantastic game because they know each other upside down and backwards.
I think it's crazy that Atletico Madrid have gone out. I think it's even more crazy that 3 teams in that group ended on 6 points. That shows how tight that group was. PSG.
I'm not as surprised that when we talked in the preview piece, right? The question was Botafogo was the X factor, and if the Brazilian side showed up, they had a real shot. And I mean, the fact that it went out on 2-goal difference between the sides and only losing by 1 to Atletico was really the difference maker. But that was a hell of a group.
I mean, the next Group C, just quickly look at, is going to be insane. Is that the games that kick off tonight, by the way?
That's today. That's tonight's games. I mean,
what time is...
Bayern should beat Benfica.
Let me just check. That's the game. 9 o'clock tonight. Auckland City versus Boca Juniors. Now, Boca Juniors currently have a -1 goal difference with Benfica at a 6 goal difference.
If they win by 7, and in any other universe, that would be a weird statement to make. But that's that's right in the middle of where it's been playing.
Yeah. If they need to score 7, and Bayern need to beat Benfica 1 or 2 just to guarantee they know they're through. Yeah. Because if Bayern are winning 1-0, for example, 2-0, and then Benfica score 1, and that could take it to joint goal if it's so crazy.
Hot take for Group C and Group D here. So if I think Boca has a real shot to get through this group, because if I'm Bayern, I need to win the group, because if Bayern finishes second, you're going to go play Flamengo, and Flamengo already showed you that they're not to be trifled with. I mean, The
Yeah.
scoreline wasn't quite as favorable. I mean, but they owned Chelsea upside down and backwards. And Chelsea, for everything we want to toss crap at them for, is not exactly a walkover side.
But just
So if
remember
I'm
though,
Bayern,
remember it's hot. Don't forget. The Chelsea manager just came out today and said they can't train properly because it's too hot.
yeah, you Europeans are soft.
It's very hot, Colin. It's sticky. so
If it
what
makes you feel any better, Dortmund was sitting in the locker room for their game in Cincinnati, and it was like 87 Fahrenheit out there. The same day that game was played, it was over 100 Fahrenheit by 9 a.m. where I'm at. It peaked at 117. 87 is not hot.
I think we had I don't know all your Fahrenheit stuff, but it was like 22 degrees here the other day, and
it's like 70s.
We were considering hiding indoors.
In freedom units.
So Group G is going to be playing Group H, and this is an interesting one.
Yeah.
Because at the minute in this group, with the way Juventus and Man City are both through, 6 points each from Group G.
Yeah.
Now the issue there is whoever comes second in this group will then face off against
Madrid.
The top team from Group H, which is more than likely Madrid. So a round of 16 of Man City versus Real Madrid or Juventus versus Real Madrid is a mouthwatering tie for Europeans. But it also has the prospect of knocking out one of the big boys, especially if it's Man City against Real Madrid. Salzburg, Al Hilal potentially going through. One of them two is basically putting through a whipping boy, in my opinion.
Yeah, the quarterfinal matchup coming out of Group E, F, and GH to me is absolutely fascinating because I think you're right. You're going to have Real Madrid versus either City or Juventus. Coming out of that, right, more than likely, another hot take. I think River Plate will win Group E.
Yeah.
And
who do they play? So they play in Inter.
Yeah, River and Inter play for top. Inter
could be going home. If River beat Inter, Monterrey win, then Inter's going home.
Yes.
Champions League runners up.
Yep. So there's a lot going on Group E. I legit think what you're going to see coming out of E and F is, here's my hot take for it. I think you're going to see River Plate have to play Dortmund. I think you're going to see Fluminense play Monterrey. And then I think you're going to end up coming out of that. You're going to have River Plate, Fluminense, Juventus, or City with Madrid, and you're going to see a battle between a major South American side and a major European side come down in the that should be the quarterfinal.
I think it could be.
I think it's going to be awesome. I think it could be. There's a good shot it could be Fluminense.
Yeah, I was looking at the list there and thinking Fluminense against Real Madrid to see who gets out of that section. But I'm looking down. I'm looking down here. So you look unbeaten so far. Palmeiras and Inter Miami. PSG, Botafogo have both lost so far. Bayern and Benfica are unbeaten. Flamengo unbeaten. River Plate and Inter and Monterrey are all unbeaten, with Inter could be going home with a defeat on the final day. Dortmund and Fluminense unbeaten. Flamengo have won both games so far, but so have Juventus and Man City. But nobody else, like Al Hilal, we label them as a whipping boy. Salzburg, whipping boy. Them two are unbeaten. And one of them has played Real Madrid. So I don't want to turn.
I'll say I'm disappointed in Pachuca. I thought that they would. I thought they'd play better. I thought that they had a more legit against Salzburg, but that was pretty flat.
And 10 men of Real Madrid. 10 men of Real Madrid. I mean, 58% possession still for Real Madrid. But Pachuca had 430 passes to 586, so it was fairly even in terms of that. It wasn't exactly like you see some teams with 130 passes to 600.
No, the possession was more even, but I mean, Madrid was clearly a much better side there. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no real dispute to that fact. Nor was that a game. The whole thing, Pachuca's entirety in this group depended on coming out of the gate and bloodying Red Bull Salzburg.
That's the thing,
and
yeah.
then potentially drawing against Al Hilal.
And Salzburg, after an absolute shocking domestic season, have actually looked okay.
Yeah.
When you look at how bad they've been domestically, I honestly expected them to lose every game in this tournament.
Yeah, that's not a league that really comes across my radar.
It only came across mine because of me taking Ostrivini on Football Manager for a while. I checked out how it was going, etc. So you think I've maybe thought about this a bit too deep and got myself in a conspiracy theory mode, thinking about Inter Miami and what's the name, Palmeiras having some sort of an agreement?
No, I think it's. I mean, I don't think it's far fetched to sit down if I'm managing Palmeiras and saying I've got a hedge that I've got a matchup coming in the next. Going into it, we sort of said, right, Botafogo was an X factor, but credibly coming into this, PSG and Atletico Madrid should have been on paper the best two sides in that group. And, fair enough, they won 2 games and lost 1. They just had bummer goal difference because they got bumped by PSG harder than Botafogo got bumped by, and Botafogo bumped PSG and just didn't lose as badly to Atletico. So if I'm sitting in Palmeiras going into my game, obviously Group B playing at a different, at a later time, like I'm looking at it saying everything in my mind says I'm playing either PSG or Atletico Madrid, and I need to be absolutely at my A game for either one of those games.
I'm also just checking something. I'm going to end on this, Colin.
Okay.
There's only one team, without checking, there's only one team has not conceded a goal yet in the tournament.
City?
Yeah. Manchester, I was just looking through there because their goal difference, I was curious seeing what teams had scored a lot, and then I realised they were the only one to not concede a goal in the first 2 games. Now, I think no matter what, again, a team who's not had the best year, so has decided to spend before the tournament. I mean, has he spent well finally? I guess we're going to find out. I think it's going to be interesting.
Is a very, very difficult gauge to say.
Yeah.
Is the side fully prepped up for, some kind of a, improved Premier League title run? I mean, exactly. I think you'll get a flash of it out of the Juventus game to see. I wouldn't put a lot on it, but I think you'll start to see flashes of what the team's doing. He's rotating a lot. I mean, Pep's very clearly rotating a lot to get eyes on a bunch of guys. So I think it's just going to be difficult. You'll have to kind of. My guess is the first month of the season is going to tell you a lot more. Than 100% telling you.
So I'm looking now. The round of 16 will be starting on Saturday the 28th, 6 o'clock. Palmeiras Botafogo, ending on Wednesday the 2nd of July. So I'm thinking, Colin, we come back on Wednesday evening for me, 2nd of July. No idea when that is for you at this point. Time zones confuse them. Daylight on me.
Wednesday afternoon.
Because then what we can do, the quarterfinals then end Saturday night. So on Sunday night we can come back and do the quarterfinals. And then we've got the semi-finals and then the final.
Absolutely.
I think, especially when they cut down to 1 game, etc., will be a lot more discussion about playing out from the back and how much we hate it.
One question is, what time is... So the final is at noon my time. What time does the final go off on?
Let me have a look. The final is at 9 o'clock, so we could do a recap straight after.
I was going to say, do we want to try and live stream we can watch the game not on stream, so we don't have to deal with all the copyright fun, but we can live stream our conversation, discussion, and
We should be able to.
analysis during the game. Yeah.
We should be able to. My internet's strong enough for me to have it on one screen and then have us on the other screen. Should be able to do that.
Okay, well, maybe we'll do a little testing, but that could be a lot of fun to come back and
could be interesting.
live
the Club World Cup final. I like your thinking. Look at this. These people are getting us discussing this random stuff live.
Hey, and then who knows? We got an entire World Cup coming.
Who knows? I tell you what, then, Colin. Thank you for joining me tonight. I'm going to go and get an ice cream from the freezer and play some Football Manager.
Have fun.
Thanks for watching.